As a creative, I tend to forget that my creative abilities are actually viable gifts that people enjoy, and that just because it cost me some of my art supply stock instead of money from my bank account, it isn't really less valuable or meaningful. But sometimes I remember this, and then I absolutely go hog wild on whatever project it is that inevitably takes way longer than I meant for it to. Such was the case at the start of February, when my two little brain cells started rubbing together to think about what I should get my dad for his birthday. I know, I make silly character art, I cosplay, I look like this sometimes. My inside brain and my outside brain don't agree with each other like ever, and I went into engineering only to turn around and delve recklessly into the art and entertainment scene. And one of the classic ingredients for that particular soup of traits is commonly known as fatherlessness. However, I like to think I'm part of the lucky collection of people that are this meme that was going around a while back.
I get it, fine. You're all without fathers, all right?
I'm not. I love my dad.
So I decided to pull a very classic move and started painting. Now what actually is this painting of at all? It's Poland, baby! Many of you know I'm half Polish, and personally I'm a big fan of the sudden increase of Poland in my recommended videos on my various social media feeds. Of course, 90% of those videos are a Polish man calling out the name of an animal, usually a rodent, followed by a string of expletives. I'm a simple lady with a simple mind. It doesn't take much to make me have a little chuckle. Now, I know this may come as a shock to many of you, but like I said, I'm half Polish, but guess what? My dad is more than half Polish. In fact, he's two halves Polish, and he grew up in Poland before moving to the States. In the small town that he grew up in, there's a really beautiful castle. It was built in the 1500s and features both Gothic and Renaissance styles in its architecture. Unfortunately, during the 1800s, when it was being used as a monastery, it was burned in a fire and since then has not been restored, but it is still considered to be one of Poland's best preserved ruins from the 16th century, and I, for one, think that's really stinking cool. I was doing some research on the castle itself and found that someone had done an sort of approximated reconstructive drawing of the castle before it had burned, and I've never seen this picture and I think it's sick. And yeah, that's just in the town, the small town, just existing. Like, I live in a bigger than that town but still small Midwestern town, and I don't pass a castle on my walk to the grocery store, but my grandma does, and she has been like her whole life. Actually, I do technically live close to a historic downtown. I'm sure I'm passing some super old buildings, but okay, come on, like an actual castle, it just hits different. And my dad has mentioned in passing that he would love a painting of this castle, and I was like, wow, I have the technology and also a YouTube channel with a weekly upload schedule, sort of, and that makes it feel more like a task that has to get done and less like an optional task with an arbitrary deadline that nobody can actually reinforce for me, because the only form of self-motivated scheduling and goal setting that I've learned over the years is that I need to build my schedule around somebody else's, and my method of getting independence over my time and schedule in college was to fill every single waking hour with either work, school, or volunteering. And suddenly, as an adult that has to self-regulate without as many constraints on my schedule, it ain't easy. Even with the constructed deadline that I made for myself with needing a video uploaded at a certain period of time and my dad's birthday, I still didn't actually get it done by the end of February, but I did get it done relatively soon after. And I've been waiting on making this video because I wanted to give the painting to my dad in person before he saw it in a video. And yes, my dad has been watching my videos, so y'all better behave yourselves in the comments. In a more serious sense, on the topic of my dad watching my videos, I am really nervous about opening up about my videos to my family. I only just told my dad that I make costumes like last fall, and he found out about my YouTube channel a little while after that. It's spring of 2024 and I've been making videos almost every week since the middle of June 2022, and honestly I wasn't planning on telling anyone at all that I make YouTube videos unless I started earning money from it, because I very much was and still am constantly fighting the learned mindset that the only things that are worthwhile are the ones that make money, which in a connected but somehow also totally separate issue makes it really hard to explain to people that I have certain days and time frames where I can't really commit to anyone or anything. That being said, my dad especially has been quite supportive of this unexpected turn of events and usage of my time, and in fact in more recent videos you might see his words in the comment section giving just a little too much information of my childhood from his perspective. But I am extremely grateful for that. I feel both extremely lucky and also extremely relieved that I have his support, and not just his support, more family members than I thought have responded quite positively to this weird and unexpected detour my life has taken. Obviously it's not perfect, not everyone is bound to understand why these are the weird hobbies that I've fixated on and why I've started making videos and why I do them in the format that I do. I never expected it to be easy, which is why the whole making YouTube videos thing has been a secret from so many people that I interact with. Despite that, I hope other creatives do find the confidence and maybe a little hope in the fact that on one hand, I was able to make a bunch of relatively consistent and project heavy videos without anyone outing me before I was ready, and on the other hand, when it was outed and I could no longer hide it, a lot of the people most important to me and the people who care about me are doing their best to be positive and supportive in their own weird and wacky ways. So whether you're on the side of needing to safeguard your ambitions in order to continue to have any semblance of mental health, or if you're hesitating and hoping those close to you support you in even the weirdest and most niche of ambitions, just know that I have been and still am on both sides of that tricky little fence. So I guess this painting is both a slightly late birthday present and also a thank you letter of sorts to my dad, who made getting over that tricky little fence a lot easier than I anticipated it would be. And I know that kind of support can be a pretty rare thing, and it's not something that I'm taking for granted at all. But you know what I do take for granted? The way that I autopilot through art. I wish I had more to say on the process of working on this piece, but really it was just subconscious stress and like hours and hours of YouTube videos end to end just to not be sitting in silence alone with my thoughts. Art for me is only kind of a conscious task. I don't think about each brush stroke. There's not really a ton of active decision making. It's more just vibes. It's kind of just vibes with some major decisions. I don't know. It's not like I'm not a visual person. I can rotate 3D cows in my brain all day long, but there is a sort of strange disconnect between the ideas I have in my head and whatever appears at the other end of my brush or pen or stylus or what have you. When I sit down with an art goal in mind, I have a clear visual of what I want the overall vibes to be. Sometimes I even have a sort of moving picture of possible end products, but more often it's what I want the shape language to look like and whether I want warm or cool tones. And from there, I just either keep sketching or I start looking up references and ideas until I find something that matches the vibes. It's a very weird process, and it's a little difficult and arbitrary to explain. If you had asked me years ago, I would say I was a lot more comfortable with traditional art than digital art, and it was true, but I have since then spent a lot of time making digital art because in terms of art supplies and also the space I have in my house for canvases and sketchbooks, it's a lot easier to not be doing physical art projects. Luckily for me, there has been a remarkable amount of transferability of skills. That is also probably because my two main traditional art styles are pencil sketches and paint, and my two main digital art styles are sketching in paint. I've definitely heard a lot of variation from different artists with the skill transferability thing, and even though mine connected and lined up pretty well, digital art still had a very big learning curve. All this roundaboutedness is just to say that, boy howdy, my digital art has very much surpassed my traditional painting skills, and I really do take color adjustment curves and multiply layers for granted when it comes to adding value and depth to a piece. Also Control Z. There have been just way too many times where I've stood there after writing or marking off the wrong day on my calendar and my fingers just twitch a little because I'm trying to press an undo button, but it's real life. And trust me, this is not just a digital artist thing. My husband is an engineer and he's done a lot of 3D modeling over the years, and he also has this Control Z problem. Because of the scale of this particular painting in the video and how differently working on a canvas feels in comparison to drawing digitally, it could have been worse. I could have pressed Control Z in my head more than I did, but there was a real, very strong yearning for the lasso tool. I have a small theory, and this is that I should step out of my comfort zone of acrylic paints and embrace oil paints, because the art I want to make is very fluffy and blendy and soft, and acrylic paint dries very, very quickly, which prevents exactly the beautiful thing that is blending colors slowly on the canvas. And I know it's not impossible to get a soft, blendy look with acrylic paints, but boy howdy, would it be easier if the paint took just a little bit longer to dry. Either that, or if I worked consistently from one end of the canvas to the other and took recipe notes on how I mixed my colors. But why would I do anything that makes life easier for myself, or anything that makes sense at all? That's not how Lady Splitchin works. There is no easy peasy lemon squeezy, only difficult lemon difficult. I actually am very afraid of oil paints. Make it make sense, but it won't. I have used oil paints a total of one time in my entire life. It was on a piece of watercolor paper. Literally, it was not even a significant painting. I just wanted to try it out. It was vines and leaves and silly little flowers. The paint never dried properly. The oils seeped into the paper. It was flaking all over the place because obviously it wasn't on canvas, and also it wasn't ever sealed. I think an added layer of fear comes from the fact that oil paints are also not super cheap, and I am very cheap. But yeah, I do think someday I should try and step out of the safe zone of acrylic paints. I know oil paint is definitely a leap in technique and probably will take a bit of getting used to, but I was working on this painting and a lot of the issues I was having with the harshness and the brightness and the lack of soft blending, I was just thinking the entire time, wow, if I was using oil paints, I might not be having this problem. But despite this being a little bit more of an ambitious and out of my comfort zone project, I think it turned out really pretty in the end, so here is the reveal. This video ended up having a lot more feelings and emotions than I intended it to have. I hope you guys are okay with that. It's just, it's been a really long week. Yeah. Also, I hope you don't mind that I didn't record my dad's reaction. It was pretty late when I gave it to him, and I kind of just wanted to give the painting quietly, peacefully. I didn't want to do a bunch of hassle and setup and whatever. But he did say he thought the painting was so beautiful. He was very surprised and touched, and I have no video of that. You'll just have to take my word for it. But it was a very good creative break to work on something other than digital art for a while. But let me tell you, I am itching to get back to that random wheel of aesthetics and traits, get back to just redrawing my childhood characters. Not to break the immersion and continuity of my videos, but I've already actually rolled for my next character. Let me tell ya, she's a doozy. I already have a ton of reference images that I've saved. I have a bunch of vague shape language 3D rotating cow stuff in my brain, but I think it's going to go well. I think it's going to go really well, but who knows? Not me.